Doctor Who has given us countless unforgettable villains over the years, but there's one mischievous Time Lord who's been missing from our screens for far too long. The Meddling Monk. The Monk is a rival Time Lord of the Doctor who likes to interfere with time just for fun. Imagine a story where the monk messes with history so badly that he has to call on the Doctor to help fix it. During the 2020 lockdown, details about an untold meddling monk origin story came to light, featuring Rasputin and disco records. Today, we're investigating into what this story would have looked like and why this episode never made it to our screens. During the 2020 lockdown, fans and members of the show came together for watchalongs on Twitter. At a scheduled time, everyone would press play on the same episode, while fans and writers tweeted along in real time, essentially creating a live commentary on a terrifying and angry social media platform. The Zygon Invasion and Zygon Inversion two-parter was one of the stories chosen to watch, and writer Peter Harness joined the tweet-along. During this, he revealed that he had pitched another exciting story to the production team. After writing his two-part Zygon story, he pitched a story titled How the Monk Got His Habits. The story would outline an origin story for the first Doctor villain, the Meddling Monk. For fans of 1960s Doctor Who, this was very exciting, but who exactly is the Meddling Monk? The Meddling Monk, or just the Monk for short, was a villainous Time Lord who faced off against the first Doctor. He first appeared in the Season 2 story, The Time Meddler, and returned again in the lost Season 3 epic, The Daleks' Master Plan. Unlike the Doctor, the Monk loved interfering with established events in the time-space continuum. His jokey demeanour provides a perfect contrast against William Hartnell's tough and gruff approach. Unfortunately, as of the making of this video, the Monk has not returned to our screens, but has appeared in many expanded universe media, with multiple incarnations in Big Finish audio productions. Peter Harness described how this incarnation of the Monk would look: suave, debonair-looking man in a plum-covered velvet suit, with tight, figure-enhancing hipsters, a long moustache, and cavalry whiskers. Harness had actor Matt Berry in mind to play the role, which I think would have been a great casting choice. The Monk is in his TARDIS, listening to old disco records, specifically Rasputin by Boney M, when he gets an idea. What if he went back in time and played this song to Rasputin himself? So, he arrives in Russia in 1917 and locates Rasputin. He whips out the record player and plays the iconic pop track, and it drives Rasputin insane. So insane that he completely loses his mind. The Monk has altered the timeline to such a degree that the Russian Revolution never happens, and will in turn changes the course of history on planet Earth. Sheepishly, he returns to his TARDIS and makes a call to the only person who can fix it, the Doctor. He looks to the camera and says, "I've made a terrible mistake." And that would be the pre-title sequence. The Monk would have been trying to contact the first Doctor, who he knew back on Gallifrey in his youth, but instead, by accident, contacts the 12th Doctor. The pair would have worked together to try and fix the timeline. They attempt to restore Rasputin's mental state, but fail in their attempts. Ultimately, they decide the only way to return the timeline to normal is for someone else to be Rasputin. The Monk regenerates into Rasputin's form and sets out to play out Rasputin's part in history, exactly as he was supposed to. A fine punishment for such a tricky Time Lord. It is suggested that this was to be the first incarnation of the Monk, before Peter Butterworth's incarnation, meaning that his experiences in playing Rasputin would inspire him to take on the role of the Monk, because Rasputin was also known as the Mad Monk. Ultimately, Harness's origin story for the Monk would never be commissioned. Instead, he went on to write The Pyramid at the End of the World for Series 10. Harness stated that he thought the idea was completely insane, but would have been fun. Although, on the 11th of May 2020, Harness released the first page of a novelisation of the story, which was to be a prequel to the episode. It revealed that the monk originally went by the name Roger and describes his TARDIS as an ornate electric console. The scene depicts Roger struggling to get his record player to work correctly. Since the writing of this video, no more of the story has been released. Since a full script was never produced, this is probably the most we'll ever see of this story. But who knows? Maybe one day it could become a full novelisation or reimagined by the Big Finish team. But this wasn't the last Doctor Who had heard of Rasputin. Remnants of this idea were explored later when instead of the monk playing Rasputin, the Master disguised himself as him in The Power of the Doctor. And funnily enough, Boney M's Rasputin was also played in that episode too, with the Master dancing along to it, much to the Daleks and the Cybermen's disgust. I feel as if you wanted to bring the monk back, doing so against the 12th Doctor just makes sense. Especially during the Stephen Moffat era, pitting this grumpier Doctor against a sillier monk is always a great combination. The monk is very much a comedic role, and casting an actor like Matt Berry just feels like a no-brainer. It's really surprising that he has never made his way into Doctor Who. I think that the show thrives under comedy actors. Catherine Tate and Bradley Walsh are just two examples. It would also be interesting to see another Time Lord who isn't the Doctor and the Master in the new series. The monk is one of my favourite Time Lord characters because he's just so silly. I love the idea of this villain who just wants to mess with things for the fun of it. Butterworth's performance is just excellent and really foreshadows the dynamic that the Doctor and the Master would go on to have. It also makes you think, with the Master being in the show and Michelle Gomez's performance being silly and scary at the same time, maybe the monk doesn't really have a place in the show anymore. Harness's stories throughout the 12th Doctor era, Kill the Moon, the Zygon Invasion/Inversion, and Pyramid at the End of the World, are much more serious stories, so it would be interesting to see how his comedic writing would work in Doctor Who. Although I like the idea of the Master being Rasputin, The Power of the Doctor has too many plot threads going on to really delve into that concept, which is a shame. So getting a whole story dedicated to that idea would be really interesting. How the Monk Got His Habit is also a cracking title, and I adore the character, so I think it could have been a really successful episode. Yet unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Maybe the idea itself is a bit too silly to be taken seriously, but I think with Capaldi's gravitas, it would bring a more serious tone to the story. Maybe it would have had a similar tone to Robot of Sherwood, a story that I liked and everyone else on the planet hated, but I'm happy to be wrong sometimes, that's fine. So, is this a story that sounds exciting to you, or are you happy that it was never made? Let me know in the comment section below. Okay. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Snares YouTube channel.